Okay, hi everyone. Welcome um, to this gloomy day in New York. This is an exquisite corpse poem event by 8 Queens poets, and we are going to perform it live for the 2023 Brooklyn Book Festival bookends. I'm going to first turn it over to Roxy of the Lewis Latimer House Museum, who is hosting our webinar for the Brooklyn Book Festival. And she's going to tell us a little bit about Lewis Latimer and the museum itself, and then we'll get started with our poem. Roxy.
Thank you so much, Abir. Hi, everyone. My name is Roxy, and I'm the Visitor Experience and Outreach Coordinator at the Lewis Latimer House Museum. So in case you have not been, this is how the house looks like on a day in spring. And this is the home to Black inventor Lewis Latimer, who improved the light bulb and really should be given credit for basically making the technology viable. And he also contributed to the patents of the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell, and also many other patents, including the early elevator system, early air conditioner system. But for today's purpose, we are here for the reading. Lewis Latimer is also a writer, actually. He also submitted his poetry to different publications. So I'll just take a minute to share some of the poems that he has. This is on the left, the book of poems of love and life that includes poems that he's written. Some of them are love poems he wrote to his wife. And this is actually put together by his two daughters in the 1920s. And we have this book of poetry on exhibit at the museum. And then on the right is actually one of many poems that he's written. He also has a habit of switching between handwriting his poems and also using a typewriter. So this is just one of those many poems that you can actually view at the Queen's Library Archives. And here are the poetry books we have on display in the case at the museum, in case you do come by at a time. But without further ado, I'll pass it back to Abir.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Roxy. That's wonderful. I love all the different aspects of Lewis Latimer's genius. He was just an incredible, just a kind of a Renaissance man, and did so many different amazing things. And I love the museum. The museum supports a lot of different events and programs, including this one. So we've been doing this event for 4 years now for the Brooklyn Book Festival, actually, and it came about because of a Queensbound event. I want to just first shout out Queensbound, which is this oral poetry project that is at queensbound.com, which brings together poets to write place-based poems. So we are trying to fill out all the subway stops in Queens and have a poem that's kind of associated with each of the neighborhoods and in different languages as well. So please do check that out. But our first exquisite corpse effort was with Queensbound poets, and actually a bunch of the poets here tonight are also part of Queensbound. I'm going to start off with just a little introduction of each of us. I'll start off. My name is Abir Haq. I'm from Jackson Heights, Queens, and I write poetry is my first writing love, but I also write fiction, nonfiction, essays, and screenplays, everything. I like all the writings. I'm going to pop it over to Renee.
Hi, my name is Renee Singh. I'm from Nicaragua, and I'm coming to you from Jackson Heights. I write poetry, and I've been writing poetry for a long time. So I'm a photographer and a videographer, and I find that these things are extremely and deeply connected. I'm really glad to be here with y'all. Should pass it on to Mancho.
Hi, yeah. My name is Moncho. I go by Shide, and I'm a poet, artist, educator, and I'm here in Astoria. Oh yeah. Next is Nadia.
Thanks, Moncho. I'm Nadia. She, her pronouns. I'm coming from South Ozone Park, Queens, and I like writing poetry and lyric essays, and I love to doodle. Also, really excited to be here. I'm gonna pass it to Cherise.
Hi everyone, I'm Sharice Francis. I go by she, they pronouns. I'm coming in from Hollis, Queens, and I'm a poet and interdisciplinary artist working in collage, bookmaking, papermaking, and performance. And I'll last pass it to Nana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nana Ikwa Hammond, and I am in Jackson Heights. And I am so many different types of writing. I love all the writing, just as Abir said. And I'm excited to be in the company of these amazing, amazing, amazing poets.
Thank you, Nana, who's also apparently in motion as well. We have actually two more poets who weren't able to join us tonight. One is Dina Igusti, and the other is Ali Abdullah Mata. So I'll just, we're going to perform each of the sections of the poems that we've written, but let me just first talk just very briefly about the Exquisite Corpse form. It was originally a surrealist word game where you would write a sentence and just show, one part of it, the last part of it to the next writer, and then that writer would use that as a jumping off point to write the next part. So it kind of become kind of an absurdist, surrealist concoction. It eventually became a drawing game where you would draw part of a drawing and then fold it so you could only see the bottom part of it and then pass it to the next person who would sort of go from there. So we've adopted this form to write poetry together. And what we did was we brainstormed and came up with a theme that we would all keep in mind. And the theme is Revelation this year. And we would write 7 lines in honor of the 7 train, which runs through our beautiful borough. And then we'd sort of white out all the lines except for the last one. And then the next poet would see that last line and then kind of use that as a jumping off point for theirs. So we've now have 8 sections of a poem. So that's the Exquisite Corpse bit of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to read that poem now for the first time. I actually haven't even read the whole thing properly, so I'm very excited to kind of listen to everyone read it. We're going to read it all, and then I'm going to read Dina's part, and I think Sharice is going to read Alia's part. And then we'll have a discussion about the theme and other elements of Queen's Lit. And then we'll read the poem again, and then we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions at all for any of us about any of this, please drop it into the chat. And Roxy has also put the Exquisite Corpse poem that we've written into the chat. So if you want to read along with us, you can do that as well. All right. So here we go. Revelation. And this is Dina's part, so I'm going to read that. Hopefully I will do it justice. I'm sorry she's not here to read it. If not us, then maybe our faces will find a way home. Maybe everything I needed to know has always been corporeal, relied on the crinkle of eye, the veins of my aunties and uncles, whom I have and will never meet, the blood of all my siblings, how it pours from forehead to mouth, after diving headfirst into a dare made by all our childhood friends. Yet they grin with sun, sneer. Don't worry, everybody, I'm still handsome.
This is Aaliyah's part. Into the crimson deep, red hot sun, gingerbread eyes and black skin. Uncovered and stolen bodies cannot be stilled or find stillness. Sweat, raw-skinned fingers, blood and flesh wounds from picking cotton and tobacco crops in July. Tenant farms, sharecropping, and credit at the general store. Yet, they leave Ridgeland, South Carolina, and White Plains, Georgia in 1935, shed Southern Black skins, and moved to St. Albans, Queens in spring.
Summer nights are like mosquito bites, all swollen flesh and relentless itch. You hit 100 on the belt before pulling up to the water and saying to me, "You mad calm." How do I tell you? I left my gods on the 4th floor of Jamaica Hospital, in a room overlooking the Van Wyck, a turquoise-domed mosque, and the Lincoln Motor Inn. My grandmother's lungs became 2 scarred moons. Wet carnations, your teeth bruising purple figs onto my neck. This is my new religion.
When I say the body is a prayer, the fact of feeling, an education in pain, I am saying we grow in the earth of regret, mired in memory, blooming by the grace of forgetting, that secret word for listening to the body, another flower in the world.
It used to be right across the sunrise window or cashew tree. I remember my Aunt Jeanette and my sister Cheryl roasting cashew nuts and giggling. I don't fully recall why I wasn't allowed to join in the joy. Something about the dangers of cashew acid and my clumsiness. Oh, the injustices I endured. Still, so much more to see, awakened by the light.
Between Bible and Babel, an observatory in a world of tongues, galvanized, shaken, transported, possessed holy roller. The emperor wears no clothes. The mouth of a child spoke, and the empire comes crashing down while she snakes her hips. The truth is an ocean, a collection of fictions, and who gets to decide what is remembered, the meaning of it all? What mysteries are prophesized in the gravel kicked up by these naked feet?
This is Boncho, reading her part. My ancestors learned how to err, vocabulary of instance, a song we pass down in A, E, I, O, U. How memories are passed down today, tomorrow, and how birds sing. Gifts that teaches how to moment.
The moment I knew nothing was a moment of pride, but submitting to the humility of asking, not knowing the answer, undresses that little Black girl trying so hard to know it all. She had to perform, and now that she is me, I'm realizing I never knew how to mean it. That's it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you all. Oh, that was such a joy to listen. I would love to know, we picked this theme of revelation, and we've all interpreted it in our own ways, and it's kind of delightful to see all the different ways that revelation comes out. For me, I was thinking about revelation as the discovery of how pain can be an education, and what that means, and also kind of the absence of pain and what grows from it and what grows from pain. But I'd love to hear what others were thinking about when you were writing on this theme.
Yeah, for me, I grew up in a Pentecostal Christian church. So when I hear Revelation, I automatically think of the last book of the Bible. So that's kind of what inspired my stanza for the poem. But also, I was thinking of how the word apocalypse also means a revelation as well. So the idea of things coming to an end, but even in that coming to an end, there's a truth telling there, and there's a chance for things to start over again, and for people who weren't empowered to find some kind of empowerment through that ending and revelation.
I guess I will speak then. I have been engaged in some old stories recently. I had this experience with a beer recently, about 3-4 months ago, a memoir project, and I had the opportunity to read with a group of writers, and it was the first time in 35 years that I was actually reading in public. So that process of engaging memory is a process of discovery, of revelation. So that is what I had in mind when I wrote the first lines that were visible. And I was sharing with a beer that I thought that was all that we had to do. And I had to go back and revisit those 2 lines and discover what they had behind them. And it was this moment with my aunts. So this process of re-encountering my own story in some way is what I am experiencing as revelation in this project.
I'll go next. For me, my line, like for revelation, I think of sudden insights of just something that's like a flash. And for me, it's always like those constants as I live. I remember whenever I get off the train along the end and come home, the doors open and it's like it's a revelation for me. But like there's moments where I'm just so tired from work, I just like those doors just open. I get out and sometimes I just like stand in the middle, close my eyes, and just be in the moment and try to revel in it. And for me, it's just the revelation of just like, I'm existing. The skin's going, the blood's going, the bones are there, the nerves are there, and then like I think there's some moments where I like heard some birds. I was like, that's going in there, and just like those moments and how deeply it makes me feel ingrained in the now. For me, it was special. Yeah. Okay.
I first of all, I'm so inspired by everything all of you are saying. So this is beautiful. My part came after your part, Mancho, and I saw the last line. I could only see your last line. And so I was riffing off of this idea of the revelation that can happen in a moment. And so I started to think of moments in my life or moments in recent memory where I had a revelation about something. So that was sort of my thought process.
Nana, thank you for that, because I think that was the way that I wrote my stanza too. I thought about this moment when I was driving down the Belt Parkway with a friend, and it made me think about all of the ways grief kind of shows up in my life, even in like intimate relationships with people and in friendships. And my grandparents passed away 7 years ago, and I feel like grief is now like in the passenger seat, and I'm like back kind of like I'm driving again. So this writing this with all of you it felt very healing and like a really nice moment of just like reflection. So for me, I think revelation was also reflection.
I love that. Reflection was actually one of our other or something close to that. Reflection, recollection are all these. We've been riffing on our name themes. We have like 4 themes, and each of them has begun with an R. And I love that, and I love kind of the time traveling aspect of many of the poems that you've written. And just going back to like Alia's poem, which goes back to her ancestors as well. And then bringing us into the now, how to be present with that. I love that Mancho, just being present on a subway stop. That is like, seems like the most kind of opposing or like diametrically difficult way to be present in a place of motion and transition. That's really nice. I would love to know also what each of you have got from this experience of writing in community. Poetry can be what one of my students once described it so beautifully as the work, the lonely work of one, or something like that. Anyway, so writing is often such like a solo project, and so one element of this is that we get to write in collaboration. We're writing on our own, but also writing in community. which is the thing that I find really lovely about this. And every time we've done it, the poem has always come out totally surprising, unexpected in all these ways, and also kind of beautifully fitting together in also a surprising way. But I would love to know what you all thought about the process, or just about writing in general. And
I'll go. I think for me, writing is often very serious and very, I just sort of put a lot of pressure on myself when it comes to writing, and there's a lot of sort of perfectionist, tendencies. But I think that what I like about this style of writing is that I sort of lean more into the game aspect of it and really enjoy the freedom of not knowing what's coming before. Because there's sort of like the way we write it, it's we sort of white out our text. So if you want to cheat, you can. But I really don't cheat, and I really just don't know what is ahead of me except that one line that I have to go off. And I think it is a good exercise for me to sort of work that muscle of just kind of letting the spirit move me to write along that line versus trying to load it down with all of my own stuff. And so I appreciate that.
I think letting go of the writing so early, this is unusual for me. I posted the 2 lines, and afterward I posted the rest. But I would probably take more time processing even if it's a short poem. It becomes a shareable thing way, way down. So this was really early for me to share. So letting go of it so early, and seeing the other pieces, and actually I'm reading the whole thing in full today, is an incredible experience, particularly because the pieces, this is not fully developed in my mind yet, but the pieces are like part of a crystal, the facets. There is a connection that has to do with the previous line and all of that, but there is a uniqueness to each piece, and they're still speaking to each other in ways that I still have to discover. But I think the main thing was letting go this early, just letting go of it, and let it have a life out there beyond me.
yeah, I really like how it forces me into, I tend to be a very linear or narrative kind of writer, and poetry in general forces me out of that. And then this particular kind of, this project itself, it makes me feel like it breaks me out of my kind of usual narrative, linear kind of ways. Mancho, you were.
To me, it reminds me of like cooking with my family. Everyone has like a station and what they're doing, and then they just pass it on. They're like, I'm not gonna look at it anymore. Essentially, it's like I remember like when we make like tamales, it's like a person does the masa, and they pass it on. So like that's the line for me. It's like I did all of this. That's my line. You're next, and then so on and so forth. And eventually it's cooked, and we all eat it, which we're doing now. So yeah, reminds me of that. And there's a lot of I don't know. And to me, sometimes the line is like a hand. So it's like video. I don't know if you can see it, but anyways, that's my hand. So it's just like, so, and it's always open and beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. This process for me is a lot about learning to trust and being open to others, because I'm used to having full control over my entire creative process. And so I have to be like, okay, this is what my part is, and just let other people do their part. And sometimes I struggle with that myself. So it's kind of a good practice for me, and kind of a learning a value that's important for community in general.
Yeah, I remember I had the first experience of letting go for writing when I was writing a screenplay, and I realized that what you write is just a blueprint or like just the beginning, and then everybody else, like the actors, will just take it to wherever they want. And that was a really difficult experience for me as someone who has, is very particular about every, like even punctuation that I use. I'm like, no, that has to be, it can't be a semicolon, it has to be a like, so the idea of like, yeah, just seeing something kind of take off in a different direction than I could possibly even conceive is yeah, it's really good for me. I would also like to, I gave some shout outs to some Queens organizations. I know this is the Brooklyn Book Festival actually prides itself on having events in all 5 boroughs of New York City. And probably that's, like we've been kind of a staple of their programming for 4 years now. So, we heard a little bit about Queensbound and Lewis Latimer, but I know the rest of us have other Queens organizations that we work with or support or love, and I'd love to hear some you all talk about that. Mancha, do you want to start?
I'll start. Okay. The Queens LGBTQ Center, lovely. They have events every week, every month. I love being there and being community with them when I can. It's hard for me for certain times of the day. And also there's like a community event that happens. It's called the Dave's Lesbian Bar. And essentially it's just different queer folks coming in together once a month and having music and food and like books and all those other events that are happening and bringing the queer community within Queens together for, I love it. And I love being part of it and helping out as much as I can when I can. So yeah.
Do you have a website for them? Maybe we could.
Uh,
Perfect. Roxy already put it. She jumped.
okay, hold on.
You, Roxy.
I can go. Well, of course, Abir mentioned Queensbound, which I'm part of as well. I'm also part of Newtown Literary, which is currently on hiatus, but we're working towards bringing that back as well. So stay on the lookout for that. And I'm part of also the Southeast Queens Artists Alliance, and we do regular shows and exhibitions throughout Queens. We recently had one at Flushing Town Hall, and we're planning on doing more in the future. And for poets, there's several spaces throughout Queens that are doing regular poetry readings as well. So like Q and Willow Books and Kew Gardens. Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning is doing regular poetry, spoken word events. King Manor in Rufus King Park also does poetry readings as well. So there's a lot for poets in Queens to get in touch with.
I'm going to just say everything that Cherise said. Newtown Literary was what I was going to share. They have been super supportive of me. I've done some events with them a few years back. But just to add something else, it's not an organization per se, but I just love the Queens Public Library. I just have to shout out the library. All the branches the branches that I've used, the Jackson Heights branch, the Jamaica, which is the central branch in Queens, is awesome. And they've been just wonderful resources to me of just being able to kind of sit there and get writing done when I can't work in my apartment. So I love them.
Also gonna I'll shout out for the Jackson Heights Library. It's wonderful, and a place that I often go to when I just need a break from working from home, and I just sit there and I work there too. And they also host events. I've done an event in like one of their event spaces. And I was just thinking about the fact just down the street from there is the Queen's Pride House, which is also a lovely organization where I've also done events, and they have got a really beautiful space and really nice programming. So that's another, I'll find it and drop it in the chat. Nadia or Renee, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out Guardians of Flushing Bay. They do a lot of work around educating folks about Queens waterways, including waterways that have been submerged underground in Flushing Corona Park. And they had a series of really great workshops in collaboration with Queens Museum of Art this summer. Poetry workshops, a dyeing workshop, and I think they have a Saturday event coming up in the fall where folks can come out, learn about Queens waterways, and do some arts workshops. So shout out to Guardians of Flushing Bay. Also shout out to Queens Museum of Art.
Well, I'm going to come across as a misanthrope. I have no connections with any organization whatsoever, but I do share your appreciation for the Queens Public Library. And I guess eventually I might be able to say I'm connected to this or that organization, but this is all you got right now.
I will say Renee was part of a memoir workshop that we do every year that's hosted by the Lewis Latimer House Museum, as was Nadia. So every year I facilitate a workshop for memoir writers who are interested in race and immigration. We accept 8 students every year and have this wonderful, semester-long workshop. So if you're a Queens writer and interested in joining us next year, we usually do a call sometime in the fall, and then it usually is in the spring that we have it, and it's been an incredible experience. So yes, shout out to Lewis Latimer House. And I will say I'm just completely separately, many of these organizations have they participate in Queen's Pride, which I think personally is my favorite pride parade in like the whole of the country. And I used to live in San Francisco, which has an amazing pride also, and the Manhattan Pride parade is also great, but Queen's Pride is its own whole special joy. Like you will see, I mean, I did not know the kinds of tiny little organizations. There are so many of them and they're delightful. They get all dressed up and yeah, the funniest. The Queen's Library actually had a great banner this year that was what was it? It was like,
What's your query?
What's your query? Yeah, what's your
Yeah.
query? I was just dying. So cute. So yeah, you'll see a lot of these organizations and many more, in the Queen's Pride that happens in June. Are there anything else that people would like to talk about Queen's community, lit-wise, or anything else?
Well, I just want to shout out because I've also been participated in Queensbound as well, and I just wanted to take a minute to shout out Casey Tromer because she started Queensbound, but also has done just sort of really lots of different events to bring writers in Queens together. And one of the I don't know if she's still doing it, but one of the things that she does is every Wednesday, I believe, has a different poet come out to Queens to read at St. Mark's Church. And it's like a sort of really special way that it's done, in which you read the poem and then you sit in silence for about 10 minutes and then reread the poem, is how the poet performs it. And so it's meant to have a sort of meditative quality to the way you experience the poem. But all that being said, I love that she does that, but I just love that, she's so active in bringing different writers to Queens and writers within Queens together. So I wanted to shout her out and shout out you, Abir, because that's what you do too. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely Casey is the bomb. I don't think Red Door is, I think it might have ended this year, but it was such the church reading that you were talking about. It's actually such a beautiful experience to sit in this beautiful church, listen to this poem, and then just sit in silence and let it sink in. and then have it be read again, and you always hear something different. I'm actually stealing that idea from here, even though you're hearing a whole bunch of words in between our readings. But I am going to have us reread it, and hopefully you will hear something new the second time around. So maybe we'll do that and then open it up for questions after that. So all right, let me just go back to my document. So, the theme of revelation, and this is Dina's section. If not us, then maybe our faces will find a way home. Maybe everything I needed to know has always been corporeal, relied on the crinkle of eye, the veins of my aunties and uncles, whom I have and will never meet, the blood of all my siblings, how it pours from forehead to mouth, after diving headfirst into a dare made by all our childhood friends. Yet they grin with sun, sneer. Don't worry, everybody, I'm still handsome.
This is from Aaliyah. Into the crimson deep, red hot sun, gingerbread eyes and black skin, uncovered and stolen bodies cannot be stilled or find stillness. Sweat, raw-skinned fingers, blood, and flesh wounds from picking cotton and tobacco crops in July. Tenant farms, sharecropping, and credit at the general store. Yet, they leave Ridgeland, South Carolina, and White Plains, Georgia in 1935, shed Southern Black skins, and move to St. Albans, Queens in spring.
Summer nights are like mosquito bites, all swollen flesh and relentless itch. You hit 100 on the belt before pulling up to the water and saying to me, you mad calm. How do I tell you? I left my gods on the 4th floor of Jamaica Hospital, in a room overlooking the Van Wyck, a turquoise-domed mosque, and the Lincoln Motor Inn. My grandmother's lungs became 2 scarred moons. Wet carnations, your teeth bruising purple figs onto my neck. This is my new religion.
When I say the body is a prayer, the fact of feeling, an education in pain, I'm saying we grow in the earth of regret, mired in memory, blooming by the grace of forgetting, that secret word for listening to the body, another flower in the world.
It used to be right across the sunrise window, or cashew tree. I remember my Aunt Jeanette and my sister Cheryl roasting cashew nuts and giggling. I don't fully recall why I wasn't allowed to join in the joy. Something about the dangers of cashew acid and my clumsiness. Oh, the injustices I endured. Still, so much more to see, awakened by the light.
Between Bible and Babel, an observatory in a world of tongues, galvanized, shaken, transported, possessed holy roller. The emperor wears no clothes, the mouth of a child spoke, and the empire comes crashing down while she snakes her hips. The truth is an ocean, a collection of fictions, and who gets to decide what is remembered, the meaning of it all? What mysteries are prophesized in the gravel kicked up by these naked feet?
My ancestors learned how to err, a vocabulary of instance, a song we pass down in A, E, I, O, U, how memories are passed down today, tomorrow, and how birds sing. gifts that teaches how to moment.
The moment I knew nothing was a moment of pride, but submitting to the humility of asking, not knowing the answer, undresses that little Black girl trying so hard to know it all. She had to perform. And now that she is me, I'm realizing I never knew how to mean it.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I was going to open it up for questions from the audience. If anyone has them, please drop them in the chat. And in the meantime, I was going to ask if anyone wants to talk about whatever project they're working on, or if there's a book they would like to tell us about. I'll shout out one of my favorite books is Nana's children's book that's called Blue. That's out, and I've bought so many copies of it for friends and their kids, and I have a copy myself as well. It's this gorgeous book about the story of indigo, and it's beautifully illustrated, and Nana wrote the text for it, and I absolutely love it. I think it's just a gorgeous book.
Thanks, Abir. Thank you. I'll quickly share that I'm working on a novel. It's like very, very, very close to being finished with it. It has been a very beastly experience, but very cathartic, and yeah, really good. Thank you.
I'm working on a collection of poems and have been working on this collection for a long time. Material that goes back to 1995. So it's like this process of trying to see how these different pieces of my life somehow fit into a single collection. So I think I'm at the final stage of understanding how the pieces work together. So that's what I'm currently involved with. It's in Spanish.
Oh, nice.
I'll share a bit of what I'm working on. I forgot to mention earlier that I'm also part of Poets of Queens, and we have an anthology coming up that one of my poems will be part of. So I wanted to just shout out Olena and Jared for curating that project. And I'm also working on a poetry radio series with a residency that I'm part of from Academie Schloss. Solitude is their name, and that will be released in October. So stay tuned for that.
Fantastic.
And for me, I am working on a collection of erasure poems based on the anti-trans bills that are happening across the United States. I've been working on that and something else, but I think that's what I've mostly been working on in the background for me as my next collection.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Erasure poems about trans experience. I love that.
I'm working on a young adult novel about a young Canadian girl who street rapes in an act of revenge against her ex-boyfriend. And along the way, she learned some things about herself. And it is the hardest thing I've ever written. Never have written novel-length things, so it's been a learning process.
Yeah. I just finished a draft of a novel that has been in the works for 13 years. Speaking of beastly, I've actually found it to be, yeah, it's at I've just sent it off to my agent right now, and I'm really hoping she thinks it's done, because I'm pretty close to done working on it anymore, and so I would love to work on something different. Yeah, going forward. I was thinking of something, yeah, completely different, like a chick lit novel, I think, something fun and sexy. So and maybe new poems as well, which this was a lovely project to work on over the summer, to write something new in poetic form, because that's generally the thing that will always work no matter what other project I'm working on. Is poetry is always possible. Does anyone have any questions? I don't think I saw any in the chat. Oh, thank you, Roxy, for that question. I started with poetry, and I think that's for me, it's always been the thing that makes me feel the most writerly. When I write a poem, I feel the most accomplished or fulfilled, let's say. Maybe not accomplished, but fulfilled. But I probably started that. I wrote probably some really terrible poems when I was a kid, but continued despite when I look back and think about those. But yeah, then I moved into like nonfiction and then fiction, and always go back to poetry.
Same here. I started writing poetry when I was really young, and as with the beer, I wrote some terrible poems, still do. And I think poetry is this sort of writing space where I feel more at home. The sort of density of language is closer to my way of saying and seeing.
I think fiction is my favorite of all the writing. I love poetry. I love nonfiction as well, but I really enjoy putting a story together. I enjoy creating characters. Yeah, I think that's probably what I enjoy the most. But in terms of how I started writing, I think I was always writing. I think I always wanted to kind of reflect the world I was seeing back at, like to kind of examine it by writing it down. And I remember as a kid, when we would go to like family like house parties, I would be like in the bedroom where all the coats were, and I'd be like on the bed writing. And so yeah, that's how I started. There's a question in the Q&A, just so you know.
Yeah, I started really young as well, I think around 10, mainly because I was always a quiet child, and so poetry helped me to express myself. And so I've always used poetry as a way to like open the door for me jumping into other art forms as well. And but poetry will always be my first love, especially sound poetry, because I love wordplay and I love music, and so I love like interacting with sound and words and putting those things together.
Mancha, did you have a response? No problem.
Poetry. It's always been my home. It's always been my journal, my diary. When I was coming out and all my feelings and all the traumas, put it on paper and try to make it as musical as I could growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question in the Q&A about making a life or living out of writing, which I feel like is another whole that could take hours.
That's a whole other event.
I'll say my short answer, or my opinion, or short answer on that is that it's impossible to make a living as a writer, certainly as a poet. And so I have always, from the very beginning, from 20 years ago when I started became a writer, have always had another job that pays the bills. And I wanted my particular job to not be involved with writing, so that I could keep my writing energy for myself. And and also not kind of try to put any pressure on my writing to make my money. So then I could just write whatever I wanted and not have it be like, have to be marketable or saleable or accessible or all those other things. So I've always had other jobs, editing, teaching, consulting, like, office work, teach, that sort of thing. So that's my short answer, is that I think it's very difficult to make a living, maybe impossible, except for like the 1% of writers, to actually support yourself through writing.
I
It's a
agree.
bummer.
You do everything else to do what you really want to do.
Right.
So I've worked at Trader Joe's, I've worked at office jobs, I've worked as a security guard. I've done a bunch of stuff, mostly just things that kept me going was like, of course, like art, poetry, my family, my friends, my partners. But that was just a thing to get to the thing, which was the thing was my writing, my poetry.
The thing to get to the thing is perfect. Yeah.
Nadia got kicked off her Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that how do you make a life or a living out of writing is what Abir and Mancho said. In addition, I think there are ways to, you can teach classes, teach writing classes, you can and writing workshops. You can if it's something that is an opportunity for you, you can also like look into doing like speaking, because if you start doing like, if you can get on the speaker circuit, you do get like an honorarium for that. If you, and certain festivals and things like that will pay you a small amount. What I found with writing is that it's a life of cobbling together lots of different revenue streams. So even if you are, so blessed to be able to like be getting invited to places and speaking or doing all these things, it's sort of like cobbling together money from that, plus cobbling together money from, maybe actual writing work that you're doing, and also teaching classes, and just sort of it's a lot of like hustling and putting that all together. But it is possible. It's just really, really in my experience has been very fraught. And sometimes I feel like at the end of the year, when I like am putting my taxes together, I'm like, I can't believe, like, it's not that much money, but I'm like, I made that, because it doesn't feel like it at all. Because it feels like every single dollar was like squeezed out of a stone. And then on top of that, when the tax people think you made money and you're like, dude, I made nothing and you want like 30% of this? Okay. And then I find myself chasing to figure out, how am I going to pay my taxes? Because yeah, so it's difficult, but it's possible. Be encouraged.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to discourage anyone from writing, just that just maybe making it more clear that it's difficult to make the money through the writing, but there are other ways to support yourself.
Maybe somehow we can separate the making a life through writing from making a living, which I think the person that made the question actually
That's
make a
exactly what I do
distinction.
anyway. Yeah. Which poets are favored by each one of you? My current favorite poet is Andrea Gibson, who's now just recently been named the Poet Laureate for Colorado, and I love her work. I follow her on Instagram, which is where I discovered her, and I have a couple of her books, and I just find her to be so wise and joyful, and to write about such difficult things with such clarity and beauty. And I've saved so many like sort of screenshots of her poems because I find them to be so heartening in many ways.
Yeah, I'll answer both questions in the chat of which poets are my favorite and who I'm currently reading. So right now I'm reading Diane Brand's A Map to the Door of No Return. So Diane is one of my current favorite poets right now. And the reason I'm reading this book is because I will have a residency in Senegal next year. So I'm kind of doing this as a preparation for the trip.
Nice.
I have a hard time remembering the name of any person that I read. Raymond Carver has been very significant to me. Both his stories and his poetry. There's something about Carver that I can always remember him. Something in his way of talking about everyday things. And about what I'm reading right now, and the instructions to assemble a light fixture.
I actually came across this poem of a friend posted this on her birthday, and it's by a poet called David J. White. And that poem really has stuck with me. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll quickly read it. It's short, but yeah, it says, "It doesn't interest me if there is one God or many gods. I want to know if you belong or feel abandoned, if you know despair or can see it in others. I want to know if you are prepared to live in the world with its harsh need to change you, if you can look back with firm eyes saying, 'This is where I stand.' I want to know if you know how to melt into that fierce heat of living, falling toward the center of your longing. I want to know if you are willing to live day by day with the consequence of love and the bitter, unwanted passion of your sure defeat. I have been told in that fierce embrace, even the gods speak of God." So anyway, Instagram, I discovered this guy, David J. White. So.
Thank you. Mancho, do you want to?
I just finished reading Punks, New and Selected Poems by John Keane. It's been really, yeah, it was wonderful reading on it. It was just, I don't know, brilliant range and like of poems from his life, and yeah, that's what I'm digging right now.
Lovely. Thank you. All right, it's 5:00 or we're 1 minute past our time right now. But I wanted to thank everyone for logging in and listening to our poem and our discussion, and for your questions and for your comments. And thank you all poets for participating in another lovely Exquisite Corpse poem. So thank you all. Thank you, Cherise, Renee, Mancho, Nana. Sorry, Nadia, for getting kicked off the Wi-Fi. Thank you, Roxy, for assisting and helping and hosting. And thank you, audience.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.